the children are not reacting to the situation itself, but they are reacting to the associations that the brain has already formed. Hi, have you ever watched a child behave in a certain way and wondered, where did that come from? Why does one child repeat the same behavior again and again? Why do some children copy everything the adults around them do? Why does a child suddenly develop a fear of something that once felt normal? And why do children behave differently depending on the environment they're in? The truth is, children's behavior is not random. And for decades, psychologists and researchers have studied how behavior is shaped by experiences, by consequences, by observation, and by the environments these children grow up in. The theories that emerge from this work continue to influence how we teach, how we parent, and how we guide children every day. And in this series on Elimu Café, we'll explore some of these important ideas and what they reveal about the developing child. Because whether you're a parent, a teacher, a guardian, or a caregiver, understanding how behavior is shaped changes the way we respond to children. And once we understand the child a little better, guiding them becomes a lot easier. So karibu, I'm Teacher Lea, and I hope you learned something from this series. When I was little, I discovered that I was left-handed. My mom did too, I think one way or another, because my instinct was to collect or pick anything or do anything with my left hand. Then I went to nursery school, a very nice nursery school located in our neighborhood. And when I was there, I met this wonderful teacher. And she told me that every time I'm supposed to write, I'm never supposed to use my left hand. Her reasons known to her, but one of the things I heard her say that I can remember, because it was a long time ago, is that writing with my left hand means I'm using my dirty hand. And so every evening before I go home or afternoon, I can't remember also the timings, she will take her chalk, you know that chalkboard duster, and she would beat my left hand right at the knuckles, so that when I go home and I have to do my homework, I'll be forced to use my right hand. And this happened throughout my whole first year of nursery school, all the way to pre-unit, because I was struggling, because my left hand was actually my dominant hand, which anybody who understands left-handed or right-handed approaches or stories knows what I'm talking about. So every time I was at home, because of this particular experience, I would always think that whenever my left hand starts to do something which involved eating, anything, I would think that then something is wrong. And so I grew up thinking that this is what I paired my thinking of left-handedness to it being a bad thing, to me using my dirty hand, and whatever stories I'd been given therefore. So right now, I'm in my 30s, and I use my right hand to write, but I use my left hand to do everything else, because over time, of course, I conditioned myself otherwise. So that brings me to the story of a gentleman called Ivan Pavlov. So Ivan Pavlov was actually a scientist. He was totally doing biology. And when he was in his lab, he would bring in these dogs, and every time he would feed them, he was actually testing the amount of saliva that these dogs were emitting or whatever they were doing, so that he can be able to understand something about their system, their biological system. And throughout this time, whenever he would give these dogs food, he started noticing certain things, that every time he would call in the dogs, they would start salivating because they knew that they were going to be fed. And as a result, every single time he started noticing that even when the assistant was bringing the dogs food, even before they ate the food, or even before they saw the meat, they would start salivating. And so he started thinking, could there be something here? And as a result of that, Pavlov decided to introduce something called a bell. So he would ring a bell every time he wanted the dogs to come in for the food. So the first time he rang the bell, of course, it was just a sound to these dogs and it meant nothing. But over time, these dogs started pairing the sound of the bell to the food. So whenever the bell rang, these dogs, interestingly, would start salivating, even when there was no meat. And that became what we call the theory of classic conditioning. So this whole conversation is to ask ourselves, when we pair a certain stimuli, which is our natural instinct to do something, with a particular experience, how does it impact our learning or our personalities or our behaviors in general? So Pavlov, in his wisdom with his dogs, actually made us realize that there is something called the unconditioned stimulus and an unconditioned response. So the unconditioned stimulus in this story is, for example, being beaten. So you find every time, for me, as I was giving my own personal experience, every time I wanted to write with my left hand, there was a punishment that is involved in that. And what does that do to a child? It brings up an unconditioned response. So my response became automatic. Every time I would want to write with my left hand, I would think that something is wrong with that, and I would automatically change, and it eventually made me think or be conditioned to thinking that that is wrong. And so when you look at this example, when you're discussing classical conditioning theories, you go back to the child. This child could be your child as a parent, it could be a child as a student, or you as a caregiver, or in any capacity in which you're dealing with children. And we ask ourselves, how are we pairing, what experiences are we pairing our children with, and how are they impacting their attitude towards things? Now, for a teacher, pairing an experience, a bad experience with a subject will make the child have an unconditioned response to that particular subject. And you will notice that very commonly when children are talking about certain subjects and they talk about, I hate maths, or I hate Kiswahili, or I hate a particular subject, because that particular subject was associated or paired with a bad experience. So let me give an example that is very common, especially in middle class families today. Children are told that speaking Kiswahili ni ushamba. It means that you're not refined. It means that you're not up to par with the global standards. And so when children pair this particular experience to this particular language, then it influences their attitude altogether in school. Another good thing you'll notice is most of us, if you remember your primary school experience, and also some of us in high school, your maths teacher ndiye alikuwa anakuchapa. He was the one who would constantly beat you because you didn't understand a concept. I remember I was beaten relentlessly for not cramming the multiplication table. It was supposed to be rote. So every time you'd come to class, he would ask you, what is 7 5 8? And every time you'd miss, you'd be beaten. So by default, you condition your mind or you condition your behavior to thinking that mathematics is actually a bad subject because of the way you've been punished for it. And it can apply in anything else. Why is this theory very important to us and for our children? This is because it shows that it is very important the kind of experiences we give to our children when they are little. If a child repeatedly experiences certain bad stimuli, such as embarrassment. For example, the child is in class and you're laughing at them for speaking, or you're speaking to them harshly at home, or you're constantly beating them because of doing something, then these children begin to associate these situations with anxiety. And then this brings them into having fears, unprovoked fears that you're wondering. Every time you notice that some of us, even right now, we're not able to even stand up and speak in front of a crowd because at one point or another when we tried when we were little, someone maybe laughed at us or criticized us so much that we pair that experience with this particular event. And so at the end of it all, the children are not reacting to the situation itself, but they are reacting to the associations that the brain has already formed because of this pairing of experiences. So for us, we have to stop and think and ask ourselves as parents, as teachers, as caregivers, what kind of experiences are we giving our children at home, at school, in church, at the mosque, or anywhere else in which they are interacting with us? It's important for us to encourage our children through positive experiences where we show them and we let them link their lives, their livelihoods, their experiences, their behaviors to good things, upon which now they gain more confidence, they become better at doing their own things, and they realize that they are capable of doing anything. This also helps them build their curiosity, it helps them build their confidence, it helps them build their self-esteem, and these are so important, especially when it comes to behavioral theories, talking about how it influences how a child becomes and who a child grows up to be. We have come to the end of this episode, and thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, to like, to share, to subscribe, and let's continue building this beautiful community together. As always, I'm Teacher Leah. Have a good time.